Hi, it's Toby Hazelwood here, and today I'm going to be talking to you about an idea that I feel is very close to my heart, to the extent I recently wrote an article about it, and that is on the idea of trusting the process, which I guess is another way of talking about the importance of time and allowing time to pass in any endeavour that you're undergoing, in order to allow its effects and its results to become clear and to manifest in your life. Now, I think it applies equally in pretty much every aspect of life that I can think of, certainly from the point of view of projects and endeavours that you're undertaking in work or in your business life. It's incredibly important, certainly in relation to anything that you're trying to learn, if you're going through a process of education formally or informally, whether that's sort of learning things, teaching yourself things, studying things at school or at university, or in a process of personal development. It applies in personal goals, so it applies equally to perhaps if you're trying to train yourself for a particular event, a race like a marathon or something like that, or if you're trying to build fitness, or even if you're just trying to kind of lose weight and live a more healthy life. It also applies, I think, in personal relationships. So if you're in a happy relationship with someone, a loving relationship, it applies in terms of seeing the effects of the way you conduct yourself in that relationship. It also applies if you're trying to build a new relationship, and it applies if you're going through the breakup of a relationship, such as divorce. The importance of time is huge within each of those instances. And I guess it applies really if you're going through any process of recovering through any hardship, whether that's, as I say, a relationship breakup, or if it's around, dealing with a struggling business or struggling in your work, or going through a particularly painful period such as a bereavement. I think taking time to trust the process and allowing time to unfold is important in each of these things. So I guess the idea, if you can keep in your mind the idea of trusting the process, then what you're essentially doing is forcing yourself to be patient. It's kind of putting a natural check onto your mind where times you may be feeling impatient, you're struggling to see the fruits of your labours, you're struggling to see the results coming about, you're struggling to sense an improvement perhaps, or struggling to know when you're actually going to feel better. And if you can actually trust the process and allow time to pass, then you're putting yourself in a far better position to actually get the results that you want to achieve. So it encourages patience, but it also encourages you to remember that you may be putting in all these efforts and taking all these small actions and things that you don't necessarily see the immediate benefit from. You enter into a project or into a process, and you start from day one, but the thing is you don't always necessarily see results from day one. So when you decide you're going to go to the gym, for example, taking my previous example there, you make the commitment that you're going to go to the gym, and you may in the first week go 2 or 3 times, maybe even 4 or 5 times, and you're struggling then to immediately want to see the benefit, and you won't feel the benefit straight away. In fact, if you're starting out in the gym, like I often do when I've had a kind of lapse, you get back there and you expect to feel great, and actually you feel terrible because you're tired, you start to ache, you discover new body parts and muscles that you didn't know you had, or you'd forgotten that you had because you've woken them up and now they're hurting. But you certainly don't necessarily see the gains from day one. You don't start to lose weight from day one. You don't start to build muscle tone from day one. And if you can actually remember that you need to trust the process and you need to let time elapse so that it can actually bring about its effects, then you kind of allow yourself to submit to the idea that you're not going to see results on a day-to-day basis, and therefore there's no point in the example of trying to lose weight in jumping on the scales every day, because what you see and what the scales tell you won't really be effective or meaningful on a daily basis. However, if you can remember that over time you're going to achieve something, then it allows you to just kind of get on with the doing, getting on with the taking of action, and trusting that the effects will come about as you need them to over time. Now, what obviously happens, or the way I like to think of it in terms of how it unfolds, is when you start out in a project, whether that's a process of self-improvement, as I say, or a business project perhaps, or something you're trying to do at work, something you're trying to launch a new product or create a new product and launch it to a new market. Often we start out with a massive amount of enthusiasm. So at the very outset, you're kind of really buoyed up, you're full of energy, you've got a great idea, and it's going to change your world, it's going to change the worlds of people who use it. and the energy kind of carries you through. So obviously you'd be putting in a lot of work, potentially. You'd be going to the gym lots, or you'd be putting in lots of work on your work project, or you're perhaps even coming out of a relationship. You've decided you're going to divorce, but you've got some energy about it. You've got some energy and some determination that this is going to work out for the best. And that's at the beginning, that's when you're starting out on the new process. And generally, I think our enthusiasm buoys us up for that. And obviously, once you're getting to the end of the project, similarly, you can see the finish line in sight. You've maybe been going to the gym for a few months, you've noticed the muscle tone, you've noticed the weight loss, you're getting the compliments. Or alternatively, you're nearly through the woods with your divorce. You can see that you've figured out where you're going to live. You've agreed with your ex-partner how it's going to work in relation to your life with the kids. You've potentially agreed what financial settlement you're going to have, and things are starting to look up. You're starting to see the end in sight. But the challenge in getting from the beginning to the end is in having to navigate what I believe is a really good name for it, is the messy middle. And that's a term I heard used recently in a podcast with Tim Ferriss and Scott Belsky. The messy middle is that bit in the middle where you've kind of gone past the initial energy and the initial enthusiasm. You've kind of realised that actually there's a long period of hard graft ahead of you if you're going to get what you want and if you're going to achieve what you want to achieve. And that messy middle is often where a lot of people kind of lose faith, and they lose the resolve, and they lose the commitment. In a divorce, that can be the period where you feel like nothing's really happening, or it's just back and forth of either letters between your lawyers, or the kind of endless difficult conversations, and picking yourself up again, and dealing with the downs, and then picking yourself up again, and so on and so forth. And it's hard then to see the end in sight, because you don't really know when that end is going to come. And with the gym, it can be that period, 2 or 3 months in, where actually it's just becoming a grind. You're having to drag yourself there every week, and you're feeling deprived, and you're feeling tired, and you're not necessarily getting quite to the point where you're seeing the results you want to see or receive, and therefore it becomes a really tricky process of trying to keep yourself motivated through that messy middle. And I guess what we have at this point is that risk of giving up, that risk of losing heart and losing faith that we're actually going to get there, and that the actual process is going to unfold and give us what we want. It's when our trust in that process is most challenged. So I'm just going to turn my notes over here so that I can make sure I don't forget anything that I wanted to cover. And I think, realistically, it's about getting through that messy middle and maintaining the motivation so that we actually reach the end from the beginning. And if we expect the messy middle potentially, there's no point going into it thinking that anything's going to be easy. But if we trust in the process, and we trust in the fact that we're going to put in the committed, repeatable actions, then really all we have to do is keep that in mind. We will experience the messy middle. We will experience the loss of self-belief potentially, or the impatience or the frustration that results aren't coming as quickly as we'd like them to. But ultimately, we'll remain committed to the course that we've taken. And that will get us to where we want to get to if we can just remember that. And I think the key thing really is about patience. It's about encouraging patience and accepting that patience is necessary in virtually anything worth doing. So, we're told if we want to master a new skill, it takes around 10,000 hours of effort put into that skill before we can really master it. And that's a long time, that's a long time for anything. Mastery may not be your goal, and in a lot of instances you may just be thinking about getting through something, experiencing life, or getting through the divorce, getting through the tricky patch in your life, in your business, or whatever. But it still takes a patience, and it still takes a number of hours to be put in, and allowing time to pass before you get to where you want to get. If you just consider examples in nature as well, the seasons take time to pass. It takes many, many years to grow a forest, or even to grow a tree from the saplings and from the seeds. Anything worthwhile takes time. To actually see the effects of compound interest accruing on an investment. You've got to put money in over time, gradually, into an investment, but you've also got to allow time to pass for the interest to accrue, and gradually for you to build your wealth. And I guess one last thing that I'd like to mention in relation to trusting the process is that the process applies whether it's about the good things that you're doing and the minimal actions that you're putting in repeatedly, and as equally applies to the things that you don't do, the missed workouts, the cheat meals that you eat, or the half-assed efforts that you put into your job, or in the relationship sense, if you're in a loving relationship and you kind of let yourself go, you stop taking pride in your appearance and you stop looking after yourself and you stop showing an interest and showing affection in your partner, then that process of decline and decay will apply equally, and it will apply equally over time at a level that you may not necessarily detect. So it's really important there then that you kind of remember the effects that can kind of happen from a process, either for the good or for the bad. And another one of my personal development heroes, Jocko Willink, the former Navy SEAL, he encapsulates it best in a quote which he analogizes it to the Roman Empire, and he says that, in loose terms, this isn't his exact quote, but Rome wasn't built in a day, as the saying goes, but Rome didn't fall apart over a day either. Things fall apart when it's a little missed action here, or a little slip up there, or an error of judgment here and there that gradually over time compound, and things fall apart gradually just as they build up gradually. So really, we need to be mindful of the fact that in either case, whether we're doing things well and putting in the time, or we're not doing things well and just not bothering, that in either case the process will unfold, and we need to trust that process and expect the results will come about from it. So I really hope that has kind of made some sense and offered you perhaps some reassurance. If you're going through a hard time, a divorce or a breakup of a relationship or a challenge in your business, you need to expect that time is going to need to pass in order to kind of get through that process and to allow the process to deliver the results that you want it to. You will feel better, but it's going to take time. You will get the results you want, but it's going to take time. But as long as you keep putting in those actions and you keep making the positive decisions, chances are you're going to get what you want eventually, and chances are you are making the minor and microscopic, perhaps almost indetectable steps towards your goal without even knowing it. But you just have to trust in that. And similarly, if you're getting complacent in your relationship or in your business, maybe have a think about whether or not you are doing your best and you are putting in the time and the efforts that it deserves. Because if you don't do that on a regular basis, you must expect that things are going to fall apart and you aren't going to get the results you want. You're not going to have the loving and supportive relationship or the healthy and thriving business, but instead, things risk falling apart. So we need to trust that process and that it applies in either case. So with that, I hope you found it useful. I'll be sharing this in all the usual places, and wherever you're picking it up, whether you're watching or listening or reading even, I hope you find something useful within it. If you do, I'd love to hear back from you. If you don't, I'd still love to hear back from you and how you think I could do better. And in the meantime, this is Toby Hazelwood saying goodbye. Thank you.